Imagine a world where the Cold War suddenly turned hot. A Soviet blitzkrieg barrels across Europe, nuclear firestorms erupt over major cities, and within just 7 days, Soviet tanks are pushing through the heart of Western Europe. This was the terrifying vision behind 7 Days to the River Rhine, a top-secret Soviet war plan. What was the Soviet strategy? Could this have worked? And why was this blueprint never put into action? Buckle up, because we're diving into one of the most chilling war scenarios of the 20th century. The Cold War was a global chess match between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. With nuclear weapons on both sides, the stakes were higher than ever. Beneath the rhetoric and proxy wars lay a very real fear of direct confrontation. Both NATO and the Warsaw Pact constantly updated their war plans for the unthinkable, World War III. For NATO, this meant defending Western Europe from a Soviet invasion. For the Soviets, it meant creating a fast, brutal war plan that could neutralize NATO before they could react. Enter 7 Days to the River Rhine, a classified Soviet operation plan developed in the 1970s. The Soviet military doctrine in the 1970s centered around speed and overwhelming force. Their goal was simple. If war with NATO broke out, they had to capture as much territory as possible before NATO could fully mobilize. They feared that if the war dragged on, NATO's superior industrial capacity, especially that of the United States, would turn the tide in favor of the West. The Soviets envisioned using shock tactics, combining massive conventional forces with tactical nuclear strikes to break through NATO's defenses. They would exploit weak points, overwhelm cities and reach their main goal, the Rhine River, cutting through Germany within 7 days. Crossing the Rhine would effectively split NATO in half, isolating Western Europe from reinforcements. So, what exactly did 7 Days to the River Rhine look like? The plan called for an all-out assault across the Iron Curtain, starting with Warsaw Pact forces launching a coordinated attack on NATO positions in West Germany. Mechanized divisions would sweep westward through major cities like Hamburg, Hanover and Frankfurt, with tactical nuclear weapons used to neutralize NATO strongholds. On day one, Soviet forces would launch a massive artillery and air campaign, followed by rapid tank advances across the North German plain, targeting NATO's industrial hubs. By day three, they would advance deep into West Germany, capturing key bridges and airfields to maintain supply lines. By day 7, Soviet tanks would be on the banks of the Rhine, with NATO scrambling to mount a defense. But perhaps the most terrifying part of 7 Days to the River Rhine was the planned use of tactical nuclear weapons. The Soviets expected that both sides would use tactical nukes on the battlefield, targeting military bases, transportation hubs, and even cities. Potential targets included Warsaw, Berlin, Hamburg, and Munich. Both NATO and the Soviets understood that once tactical nukes were used, escalation to full-scale nuclear war would be almost inevitable. But this daring plan had its weaknesses. The logistics of moving hundreds of thousands of troops, tanks, and supplies across Europe posed a major challenge. If NATO forces managed to destroy key Soviet supply lines or create strongholds, the war could grind to a halt, turning into a drawn-out battle of attrition. NATO also had its own war plans, like Operation Able Archer, focusing on preemptive strikes and nuclear deterrence to halt a Soviet advance. In a situation where both sides were ready to use nuclear weapons, neither could be assured victory. So why did 7 Days to the River Rhine remain just a plan? For one, the Cold War never turned hot. But also, over time, both sides realized the devastation nuclear war would cause. Throughout the 1980s, arms control treaties and de-escalation efforts like the INF Treaty in 1987 reduced tensions between the superpowers. By the time Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in the mid-1980s, the Soviet Union was shifting toward reforms and de-escalation, focusing more on economic survival than military dominance. In 7 Days to the River Rhine remains a stark reminder of how close the world came to nuclear annihilation. Although the plan was never executed, it shaped the military strategies and mindset of both NATO and the Warsaw Pact throughout the Cold War. Today, as tensions sometimes rise between NATO and Russia, the lessons of 7 days to the River Rhine remind us of the catastrophic potential of modern warfare. It underscores the importance of diplomacy, arms control and international cooperation to prevent such a scenario from ever playing out. The Cold War may be over, but its legacy still looms large in geopolitics. Plans like 7 days to the River Rhine show just how close we came to the brink of nuclear war. The question remains, how close are we to repeating those mistakes? Thank you for watching. If you found this look into Cold War history as fascinating as we did, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know what other Cold War topics you'd like us to cover. Stay safe, and let's hope this scenario stays locked in the pages of history.